Sandy and Nora's podcast.
Hey, Nora.
Hey, Sandy.
How goes?
Well, it's Canada Day, so, being super patriotic out here, having my kids got 911 called on them for selling bracelets on the side of the road, so that was pretty funny.
What?
Yeah.
What?
The guy didn't like that we were on the sidewalk. We took his spot, and so we called 911, and the police came, and they were like, sorry, you want me to do what?
His spot
to these
in
children?
public space?
That's right.
What?
My kid ran over to me then, and he's like, he doesn't know that I'm under 12, and I can literally do murder and not get arrested. And I was like, okay, keep that one under your hat.
That is super weird.
Yeah.
2024, everybody. The folks are doing just fine, apparently.
People are doing great.
The people are doing fantastic. I am back in LA, which is by virtue of not taking WestJet, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Power to the mechanics who were like, we're going on strike.
Power to the mechanics. Oh my God. Like apparently something like 100,000 customers were affected, which is like, fuck you, WestJet, for letting that happen. But, power to the mechanics for, taking an amazing job action.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? The thing about like airline mechanics and, it's which is the same as the thing of so many other kinds of jobs. You don't want to underpay them, like at all. You want to make sure they're super well paid and they're super well rested and they are catching every single bolt that might be loose on the fuselage of that plane.
Well, especially in this day and age, especially if you're a customer, if you use like Boeing planes, which by the way, I'm sure which WestJet does. And I'm sure you've paid attention to this because I know you pay attention to space stuff a lot. But have you heard about the astronauts that were stranded?
Oh, no.
What? Nora. I am stunned and surprised. So there was a mission that I think was supposed to end last week or maybe the week before. It was supposed to be an 8-day mission. And these astronauts went up into, space and on a spacecraft manufactured by Boeing. And it malfunctioned. And they are now at the International Space Station.
No.
Where they will remain until they are able to be rescued. Yeah.
That sucks majorly for them.
Yeah, Boeing. I don't know, man. It's getting worse and worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, airline mechanics, you folks go on whatever work actions you need. And especially in this case, it was so interesting that the federal government tried to impose arbitration on the process and the workers voted in 100% in favor of going on strike. And this has all happened this past weekend. And at the time of recording and by the time you hear this, it's already been settled. They've already gotten a new contract and it was better than the last one. So
that's right.
Picket lines.
There we go.
That's where it's at, is a picket line. And you know what? It doesn't have to get to the picket line if management doesn't screw around. And when they screw around, it goes to the picket line and the workers win.
That's right. So lots of things have been falling apart. To know if you've heard.
Is that right?
Yeah. The Science Center news, which we're not going to get into on this podcast, but in Toronto, there is a science center that is managed by the Ontario government. It's a activity, I suppose, like a building of the Ontario government, which Doug Ford has announced that he wanted to move initially, and now as part of that, I guess, or speeding that up, which was quite controversial. Long story short, there's a building that is currently in operations that people had planned to go visit the science center throughout the summer. People had tickets and they've shut it down because, citing that it was unsafe. And then the engineers report came out and turns out that they could have kept it open if they wanted to for a few months and they would have had to, do the maintenance that needs to be done. But of course, They don't want to do that because they're probably selling off the land to some developers. But all of this is to say, as I was visiting my parents this weekend and we were talking about this, they're like, they just, government does not want to maintain anything. There was another report or a news report that came out that was like, well, here are all the public schools that are in the same state of disarray as the Ontario Science Centre that they're not closing. But you guys, you need to do some maintenance on this too. We all know what's going on in Calgary with respect to the water main that is still not fixed, but they're saying should be fixed early this week. And similar thing happened in Quebec. So Nora, everything is falling apart.
Yeah, it is. And it's wild to watch the Ontario Science Centre stuff happen because like one of the first things that happened was a philanthropist saying, look, I will give you $750,000 or even $1 million to keep this building open. Like if we're just talking about money.
I think it was like $3 million. It was like, it was a significant amount.
It was significant, but it's like, I mean, this is supposed to be public money, and the government is supposed to give money to the Ontario Science Centre every year. And it's like a museum. Like it's a thing that people go to learn about science in a society that has a culture. Like it's really, really basic stuff, and they can't even maintain it. And it is a strategy to let the roof fall in, and then all of a sudden it's too expensive to maintain. And then all of a sudden, boom, the Ford government gets exactly what it wants, which is to, as you say, likely develop the area that the Science Centre is on. And then you can also look at, just refusing to fund basic programs like the Safe Injection Site in Timmins. I mentioned this on the Daily News this past week. The government's just not funding the Safe Injection Site. Like it's just as if it's an option. Like it's just not doing it. And this is replicated across governments, across all over Canada. It is a strategy. It is an intentional strategy. And it's unfortunately a very effective strategy because things are expensive and governments are able to act with impunity, which I think is a little bit about what we're talking about today.
But before we get into that, just one final thing to note. Did you see the news about Pride yesterday, Pride Toronto?
Yeah.
Yes. So at the Pride Toronto parade yesterday, some wonderful folks did an action in support of Palestine, and they, did an action that was a sit-in to stop the parade and to make some demands, which actually in their demands, they included the demands of Black Lives Matter from back in 2016, a good solidarity move for sure. And, they were making some demands of Pride to not be complicit in the genocide of Palestinians. Now, Pride, for its part, very oddly decided to just shut down the parade and communicated that initially through a social media post and police, and then just saying that they were nervous for the safety of protesters. It's like the parade had stopped. What is unsafe about that? Very fucking bizarre, but also just really, really fucking bizarre given what I thought we had all learned in and around 2016. But I saw, mostly on social media that the reception of the action was really actually quite warm. People really were supportive of the action so much as I could see, which is fantastic. And, shout out to those folks for doing that action. It's really important that when we are calling for an end to things like genocide, that we are making sure that it's not something that we can just ignore and go on our daily lives with. It is important to interrupt the status quo. And that is what these folks did, and did it in a way that was saying hey, here's a way that our community can use our power, our collective power to say, nuh-uh. And, shout out to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. And to just make sure people are aware, Israel's biggest cheerleader in Canada right now, CIJA, was also marching in the parade, which they should never have been allowed. It's just so repugnant that CIJA, of all organizations, the Canadian Center for Israel-Jewish Affairs, or whatever the fuck it's called, would be allowed to, because they are literally laundering. I mean, if you're not yet at the place where we can say that this is a genocide, and you should be there, but if you're not there yet, they're still trying to I don't know, ignore, erase, convince people that what's happening isn't happening, lying about the deaths that are happening in Palestine as a result of Israel's bombardments. And so they're a horrible organization, and why the fuck they would be allowed to march in Pride, I do not know. I say this like seeing their Twitter stuff about them being in Pride, so maybe they didn't have an official float, but if they had an official float, I mean, that is just like unconscionable. And the other side of this whole question of safety is an interesting one, because when you have 1 million people in the streets, there is definitely a safety concern. And the safety concern is that you run things in a way that most average people will understand them to run. So if you have a massive parade and you have a protest in the middle of the parade and the protest stops the parade, by canceling the parade, you actually create way more chaos from a public security and safety point of view than if you let the parade just wait, go through the protest is fun, and then if the protest is done and then it continues on its way. Like, by framing it as a public safety issue, it makes it sound like there's some sort of nefarious danger from the protesters or whatever. And it's like, no, the danger is the 1 million people who are there to be at the event all of a sudden not knowing what the fuck is going on, and then the thing being canceled and confusion happening. So Pride Toronto, still not great at organizing stuff.
Bizarre. Okay, and so let's get into our main issues this week.
Our issues.
Things that are not
the world's issues.
The world's issues, yes. Things that are not working. That theme continues with both the Liberal Party and Joe Biden.
Biden's poor brain.
He's not working. So which should we start with, Nora?
Oh my God. Let's start with the Americans, because I think there's a lot more to say on the Canadian side, and hopefully we'll end up there. And honestly, like, oh my God, I'm sure you saw the debate. Did you watch the debate?
I watched the debate. I did. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Nora.
Like,
oh my God.
Like, could you imagine
Okay.
being his people watching that in the fucking Situation Room, watching that? Like, they're just doing so much drugs, just being like, hey, we just have to get through this night. Holy fuck. Like, we'll be able to spin anything out of it. But being raped by their brothers and sisters. That's a weird line. Oh, we beat Medicare.
Oh my God. Beat Medicare? Like, what just happened there? Nora, I can imagine actually them freaking out in their Situations rooms. What's harder for me to imagine is the months and months and months that they must have known that we were careening towards something like this happening, and them just fucking pretending like everything was fine. Even when like it became so apparent to like the rest of the world and people started talking about it more and more, they were like, nope, everything is fine. Everything is fine. And then wham, like that part is the part that I find difficult to imagine, like what you must do, what you have to do inside your brain, and also like the performance you have to put on to everyone around you to be like, the guy is totally fine, better than he's ever been. Country's being run by this dude super greatly. Like, that is hard.
It seems impossible. It seems like, I mean, like the only way to read this is extremely cynically, and I think it is worth reading it extremely cynically, that there is a cabal of people who are around Biden and who know that if Biden steps out, they will not necessarily be the ones in power, because they're not going to control someone else in the way that they control their guy. And they're certainly not going to control someone who's got cognitive capacities. I mean, did you see him try to go off the stage? Like, it was just like elder abuse. Like, let this man lie down. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, it was pretty terrible. And I mean, it has been wild to kind of watch or listen to a lot of the response in the last few days, because it seemed almost like immediately like, okay, the Democrats have finally acknowledged that something is wrong. All of their supporters who are pundits anywhere are all like, yeah, this is terrible. He needs to be replaced, some folks were saying. And then in the days following, them seeming to like actually coalesce around, no, we're going to continue to allow this to happen. Yeah, this is going to continue to go.
Yeah.
Don't look over here, folks.
Nothing
Everything's
happened.
fine. People have bad days is what it seems like the party line is right now. People have bad days. Like what? It is absolutely stunning. Yeah, people absolutely have bad days. And I've heard also like, what the bar is now for Biden. Like people are like, he did great. He answered all the questions. It's like, wow, man. Or he came out to a rally right afterwards. It's like, if that is the bar, like for fucking the president of the United States at a time of returning fascism all over the world, my God, we are in trouble. The entire establishment of people who are running the Democratic Party need a good fucking shake. And I mean, I assume that part of what they're thinking is like, well, it's, we're hoping that people are electing the Democratic Party, not just Biden. Biden is a figurehead. There's all sorts of people who will be running the government instead, and not just Biden. Of course, that is true. But the role of the president is monumentally important, to say the least. And it's just so bizarre to me that where we are in a democracy is like in a quote unquote democracy. You couldn't see me doing the scare quotes there, but I am. In a democracy is like just literally declining to acknowledge that one of the most important positions in that democracy literally like is, you're basically just admitting that it doesn't matter. You're like, whatever, the people behind the curtain are going to run it all anyway. So let's just continue to pretend that nothing is wrong here.
Well, and that's actually really interesting because if we go through like the psychology around all of this, or what people take away from the message that they're witnessing this train wreck, they're witnessing something that makes absolutely no sense, and they are going to receive that message that this is a position that doesn't actually matter. That's a problem when the actual line that they're using to get elected is Donald Trump is worse. Because it's like, sorry, does it matter or does it not matter? Like, is Donald Trump going to be worse, or does it not matter because it's a figurehead position and he will be controlled just like anybody else? And this is the dilemma of Western capitalist democracy that we're in right now, where these figureheads both matter and they don't matter. And, telling people that they have to vote because it's really important, it's their citizens' duty, while they're being given two absolute fucking clowns to make the decision through is a pretty clever way to absolutely break democracy. Like it completely renders democracy useless. There's no choice here. There's no difference here. Like what we're being given are two warmongering administrations, and one that is happy to give weapons to Israel to do a literal genocide, and the other who's saying, hey, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do war. He'll just do war internally on the American people. And it's like, good luck. Yep, here's your democracy. Here's your democracy. Good fucking luck. And try to care about literally anything else, while also the Supreme Court is like handing down decision after decision after decision, demonstrating how it's also a complete fantasy fucking body too.
It's all falling apart. Should we move to Canada?
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, but the interesting thing here is it's like, okay, so the Canadian politicians are looking at this, and there's no doubt that the Liberals are staring at what's happening with Biden and saying, okay, like, there's a strategy here to get people to vote for Biden no matter what, even if he's in very clear cognitive decline. Is there a corollary of that in Canada where Trudeau is deeply unpopular?
I fucking hope that nobody is taking that away.
What do you think, though? You may hope that,
oh
but
my God, Nora, no one's brain is working. It is, I guess that it's like one of the impacts of COVID, maybe. I don't know. I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense. I really hope that folks in any party any party in Canada are not looking at the United States and saying, well, the thing to do here is stay the course, because this is working so well for the Democrats. And looking at both the NDP and the Liberals, clearly. But I mean, I think that the party to talk about right now is the Liberals, because of the stunning loss. Well, not stunning in that, like, we're not surprised, but stunning in that this hasn't happened in a really long time.
Yeah.
The stunning loss of the Liberal stronghold of St. Paul's.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And then also, like, this rave review level fucking hack, Leslie Church, on top of it all, being the candidate to lose. I love it.
So you lived in St. Paul's, Nora. What is going on?
I did live in St. Paul's. So St. Paul's is an interesting riding. It's midtown Toronto, and it was held by Carolyn Bennett forever. And Carolyn Bennett was like a terrible cabinet minister, but a very, very, very talented local politician. And she'd been elected for a long time. So, you know, on one hand, it is true that we can call it a Liberal stronghold. But on the other hand, it was actually probably more a Carolyn Bennett stronghold, knowing that the NDP holds that riding provincially with Jill Andrew. And so this is the first election since Bennett finally retires. And maybe this is why she was like kept way past her expiry date, because they actually knew maybe internally that it might not be as liberal as it seems. And lo and behold, the Conservatives take the party from the Liberals. So one, maybe it wasn't a Liberal stronghold. Maybe it was Carolyn Bennett. Two, Leslie Church is brought in from being the director or chief of staff or whatever for Chrystia Freeland. So basically someone in like the most odious location of the Liberal machine and dropped into the riding to be given it. Okay. Two, people don't like that very much. And then three, this is a riding that has a lot of money in it. It's got a lot of poverty in it as well, but it is like the location of many very, very wealthy areas of Toronto, like Forest Hill, like Witchwood, and a couple of other neighborhoods that are kind of known for having a lot of money. I suspect that what we're seeing here is anger over the Liberals' tax policy changes, specifically the capital gains tax. And I think that we're seeing just like, as many by-elections are, a protest vote. And it's an interesting location where the NDP on paper could have been an option, considering they have the provincial riding. But obviously people decided that their protest vote was going to go to the Conservatives. And so this is why people are freaking out, because it demonstrates that the Conservative machine is clearly more organized than the Liberals are.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to be honest. I think it's a little bit more than what their actual policies are. I think the Conservatives have spent a considerable amount of money, and so has the policy organizations and like arm's length groups that support the Conservatives, like really demonizing Trudeau. They've been on this for quite some time. Add that to the fact that Trudeau is real easy to demonize because he has fucking sucked and has messed up time and again. And it's like, yeah, I mean, his expiry was probably some time ago, but there's this weird, I don't know, like, way that the Liberal Party is like, no, we're gonna stick behind our man, and like Trudeau is doing a great job, even when it's becoming more and more apparent, whether he's traveling the country or responding to reporters, that people are really, really frustrated at what is going on in Canada. People are feeling really squeezed. People are really frustrated about the impact of many of the Liberal policies and their inaction and their shitty actions. And it's like, yeah, of course this was going to be the result. And the thing that's like really odd is it's like, is there anybody who has some sort of plan to counteract this? And if there was in the Liberal Party, I think we would have seen it by now, and I haven't seen it. If there was in any other party, we would have seen it by now, and we haven't seen it. The only party that seems to be capitalizing on this is the Conservative Party, who is doing everything that they can to make sure that yes, any frustration that Canadians feel is pointed directly at Trudeau and his government and his policies. And so in a moment like this, with creeping fascism coming up, and with the total frustration that there is at the Liberal Party, I mean, there's a couple of takeaways, I think. One is that I think, again, the Liberals are in danger of becoming the third party like they were before Justin Trudeau jumped in to be leader. And I think also it's like are you folks going to do anything to change the way, as you promised, way back when, Justin Trudeau, when you got elected, to change the way that our electoral system works, to acknowledge that even if the Liberals are going to lose and the Conservatives are going to win, which is how it is right now for sure, that it is very likely that the majority of Canadians aren't going to vote for the Conservatives. It's the votes are going to be split. And so, I mean, there is something that they could do to have an impact on the future of the country, given that reality. Are they going to do it, Nora? What is it that they could do? And are they going to do it?
They're not going to do it. And let's examine what they could do. So what I actually think is happening within Liberal Party headquarters is they are too nervous about who's a possible successor for Trudeau. They don't know how that person's going to play. Even though if you put in a Mark Miller or a Jean-Yves Duclos or even a Melanie Joly, I mean, I don't think that she'd have any hope in hell, but she's a possibility. There's space for them to grow as candidates. We're not talking about Steven Dion here. We're talking about people that have demonstrated that they have the capacity to talk to the camera. I mean, okay, maybe at least Mark Miller and like Mark Carney, right? But there's clearly reticence to launch themselves into that world with a machine that is as sophisticated and as prepared as the Conservative Party is. And so they're like, okay, well, we've got the W know, he's practiced, and we know, we can probably shake things up underneath the level of prime minister to get people excited. And so how do we do that? Well, let's talk about bringing Mark Carney as the fucking finance minister or whatever idiocy that we're hearing. I'm sure they're looking at the numbers, knowing that there is a floor of people that will never vote for Conservatives. And they've already managed to stage an internal coup to get the NDP to support them. So what kind of horse trading is happening between the NDP and the Liberals? I don't think that under normal circumstances, horse trading between the NDP and the Liberals would be possible, but the NDP is in such crisis, such chaotic crisis. I mean, chaos suggests that things are happening. So whatever the opposite of chaotic is, but like that extreme and crisis, that's what they're in. And they already have given Trudeau a blank check for 2.5 years, 3 years to govern. I don't doubt that they're looking at those numbers and thinking, how do we go after the NDP's base, either officially through some sort of pact or unofficially by trying to play to them to at least salvage some of the fucking furniture. That's, I think, the brass tacks of where they're at right now. And I think that's a losing strategy. A winning strategy would be to actually promise something interesting and do something a bit more radical and show that they've got some fucking imagination. And I don't know, look at the polls and see that 80% of Canadians are against what Israel's doing. Take some bold action on that. Make some clear statements. Start doing something like as if we're a fucking country. Bring in price controls, actually start building public housing, take over some of the corporate landlords that we have in this country. There's a lot of things that they could do in theory that they never will do, but that they could do that would absolutely give them a shot in the arm for their popularity. The thing is, though, that the Liberals, much like the Democratic Party in the United States, don't actually always care about being reelected, that these are long-term projects and they serve not us, the voters, but they serve the corporate world. And whatever is going to serve the corporate world best, if these people lose government, they'll just fucking flee like rats into the provincial wings of their own party, just like the Conservatives do every time that they lose federally. And they'll all have fucking cushy jobs and they'll do the same shitty things in all different parts of Canada at the provincial level or the municipal level. And that is how politics works in this country.
Yeah, that is definitely how politics works in this country. And I mean, I think that like one of the most obvious things they could do, and like that maybe the NDP should demand that they do right now, is to like, take some action on proportional representation. Like, I mean, does nobody remember that was a promise? I'm like, here we are staring down at like the impact of our failure to implement proportional representation, what the consequence of that failure could be. And they're still not going to do it because of exactly what you just said, Nora, because in the long run, when the electorate is frustrated at the Conservatives, they can ensure that they will have a majority again in the future, and it'll be easy to do because it's going to be through a formula that they understand. And meanwhile, the rest of us in the country who are like impacted by these policies, impacted by the creeping fascism, by the arriving fascism, like it's like it doesn't fucking matter. It is so insulting to our like intelligence, to the idea that we live in a democracy, to like all of the things that we rely on government to do, that they really don't care about this shit. But that seems to me like the most obvious thing that should be done right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but again, like we're making calculations on the assumption that they want to win and they want to keep the majority and that they are willing to do good things to get that majority. Now, we're about to get a bit of a masterclass into what happens when liberals have to fucking choose a side if we're looking at the French election. So, Sandy, have you been paying attention to what's been going on in France?
Mildly, not super.
Right. Well, it's hard to escape.
I know
it.
It's good. It's hella bad.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to escape it in Quebec. Like Quebec City, the highest number of immigrants coming to Quebec City each year by far are from France, and French people are everywhere. And so you get to get a bit of a sense as to what's going on there. You pay attention a little bit more to French politics as a result. Now, the first balloting is finished, and the far right parties came out ahead, which is very bad. But not too far behind them were the far left parties, the grouping of the various socialist and anti-capitalist parties. And so Macron's party, Macron, of course, being the president of France right now, they have to decide where their votes are going to go to form a government. Are they going to fucking enter into some sort of partnership with Marine Le Pen, who is a raging racist and fascist? Or are they going to go towards the left recruitment? And we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen yet. They're still going through balloting, and there's a pact to make sure that that the most left-wing candidates can win. Where there's a race, if it's a three-way race, because there are a lot of three-way races. But it's an interesting dilemma. When liberals have to actually decide what side they're on, they're not normally going to side with the what's right. Like they will side with the right because they are parties of capitalism, because they are controlled by the capitalist machine of business and corporate profits and all the things that we rant about all the time. And it's really, really important to not lose sight of that, because Trudeau wants us to lose sight of that. Like every time he talks about some sort of thing like a national breakfast program for children, or any of the climate policies like the carbon tax, or any of the fucking like half measures giving them too much credit, like the fifth measures that they are coming up with for like social progress, they want us to forget that they actually, first and foremost, serve the corporate world. And like, I don't know how many people know this, but like, Sandy, do you know what year Canada had the highest amount of corporate profits ever in its history?
Was it 2021?
It was not 2021. It was 2022. It was 2022, and 2024 is on track to beat
Very
that.
close.
Yeah. So, you know, this is the fucking legacy of the Liberals. And we haven't even talked about military spending, right? Where military spending is getting like completely blown out of the fucking water right now, with them saying, "Oh, we're going to reach our 2% for NATO," blah blah blah, which with like 10 years ago was a punchline. It was like, we're never going to spend that much on the defense structure of this country because that's a ridiculous amount of money. We were not going to do that. And now they're like, yes, we're going to spend 2% of our GDP as per the NATO fucking rules, while the world fucking like careens to World War III with a guy who just doesn't really operate very well between the hours of 4 p.m. and 7 a.m. Don't have him make a decision, please. While he's still alive. Like, they are not working for us. They are not working for us. And the problem is, what we need in a situation where governments are not working for us is we need an opposition. And there is no left-wing flank opposing this.
Yeah, you know what else I think is partly happening here? I think that like generally in society, we're having like a crisis of being able to like have real conversation and real debates. Like one of the things that I heard in some of the analysis about Biden and why he should remain on as president from people from within the Democratic Party, I was listening to some news report where a journalist was like kind of frustrated trying to ask the questions, and the Democrat who was being interviewed was just sticking to the party line. And one of the things that he said, in addition to the fact that like we know that Biden can beat Trump because he's done it before, he's proven, blah blah blah, which is like, yeah, that was a different guy. Okay, like, we all know that was a different guy. You can compare the way that they spoke, and like he has changed a lot over the years. And one of the other things that they were saying was it's like he deserves this. He deserves another chance to run the country. And it's like, what? Who cares? But I can imagine, in part because I've seen this, right? I've seen this in nonprofits or unions or organizations that I've worked with in the past, where like a decision will have been made at some point that maybe made sense at that time. Who knows? Maybe sometimes it doesn't. But a decision will have been made by the people who have the most power at the top. And then, like, if anybody like challenges that position, if anyone's like, hey, maybe this doesn't make sense because in 4 years he's going to be much older than he is now, and that's going to suck. Or maybe this doesn't make sense because actually his policies have been really, really unpopular. The conservatives are focusing on him, and he doesn't actually seem to give a shit. He kind of thinks that this is his fiefdom. Or maybe this doesn't make sense because as an opposition party, we shouldn't just be propping up a party and what they're doing no matter what, especially when things keep getting worse and worse and worse. When people raise those issues, they're like thought of as, you're a traitor. Like you're not here in support of this party. You're not here in support of making this entire plan better. You're actually a traitor, and what you're doing is trying to take us down. And we will label you an enemy, and we will try to marginalize you as much as possible and reduce the amount of power that your words can have. And that is happening, I think, within organizations and within like organizations like political parties, nonprofits, and unions, as much as it is happening also like in the media. Like there's a certain way that certain types of conversations aren't had in the way that they should be. There should be a national conversation about Trudeau, which hasn't really happened. Like, yeah, there's been an opinion piece here or there about how he should step down. But there should be like a real national conversation about this. But there's like this fear, this weird fear about disagreeing or appearing to be on the opposite side of something because people don't want to, I don't know, appear to be against like some sort of weird consensus that has been like delivered down to us from people in power. And that's a really dangerous place for us to be. Like if you are someone in power who has made a decision about the way that that something should play out in the future, you should be able to fucking defend that and wrestle with it. If people are inclined to say, hey, here's a way that you may not have thought about it. And you should be committed to wrestling with it and defending your position rather than trying to marginalize voices that disagree with you.
Oh, yeah, but that's all that all of our institutions know right now. And both you and I know that very, very intimately. Like when you try to say anything that is slightly controversial or critical of the status quo, you are slowly iced out of stuff. And the only way that you don't get slowly iced out of stuff is if you have something that the news agency or the organization needs to say that they have, like that you can offer them something that they need. If you look at just like right now, the Globe and Mail, like some of the headlines of the Globe and Mail's opinion section are a fucking joke. Like, I don't know, here we have, I fear my daughters will see no economic future in Canada by Mark Sakamoto. Okay, what the fuck does that even mean? Andrew Coyne, in a country where immigrants are the majority, anti-immigration politics are obsolete.
What?
Andrew Coyne coming in with the probably worst possible take there. Marcia Lederman, who was briefly one of my profs, on the occasion of its birthday, here are some not terrible things about Canada. Great, Marcia, thank you for giving us the time to talk about not terrible things about Canada. Glad you have the space to do that. Shannon Proudfoot, who went to Ryerson as well at the same time that I did, not kind of journalist that I'm a huge fan of either. Here she has, Biden versus Trump was a live fire test of decrepitude and decency. Everyone failed. It's like, again, like bring it back to Canada. Could you not say something obvious? Maybe that's all we can do right now. 50 years after his defection, we're still living in the age of Mikhail Baryshnikov. Okay. Fine. What we can learn from Montreal's many glories from Marcus G. Super deep there. Ashley Nunes, striking WestJet mechanics make only $109,000 on average. Oh, the humanity. I mean, this is pathetic. This is pathetic. There's absolutely no intellectual, critical fucking thought. And it's funny because I've got this book where I'm trying to read essays on critical literary theory in Canada from like the 1970s or whatever, like back when we actually had a culture of criticism and a culture of critical analysis. And we have come so fucking far from that all of us who do the critical analysis and who do the critical thinking and who do wait, maybe this isn't the best idea. Maybe we can do something else. Blah, blah. Like, not only do we lose all of the platforms, all of the salaries, all of the fucking access to fucking audiences, we have to build our audiences ourselves. Oh, and also we have to do all of this stuff while fucking 1,000 people every month tell us to kill ourselves. It's like, this is very, very bad. This is very bad because the critical voices are a sign that things are vibrant and healthy. And guess the fuck what? Canada's in decay, and that also includes all of its institutions, and that also includes all of its left-wing institutions. And trying to stop that decay is really something that actually, if anything keeps me up at night, it is that.
Yeah, so I guess nothing's working. It continues to be.
No.
But here, I mean, the biggest takeaway, I guess, from all of it is it's just like, again, we have to be ready to take care of ourselves. and not like individually, but like collectively as communities. It means that at times like these, I think one of the most important things that we can do is to just be involved in our communities, know who our neighbors are, make sure that we are able to like help each other to survive at a time when we're not actually sure if in the future the services that we rely on are going to survive this period. It means that we're going to have to perhaps organize and provide those services to one another. And we can do that. But what we need to do is reject the inclination to isolate ourselves as this, this period of neoliberalism and late stage capitalism wants us to do. We're going to have to resist that inclination and to really, really be honest with the fact that we fucking need each other. And we need to build our own structures to support one another when the larger structures that we've built over time, like government, are failing, are being made to fail, that have been captured by corporations. We need to support one another in our communities.